One more time. Good morning, Art.
Good morning, Bob.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
We're standing here in front of the Mining and Minerals Museum, and you played a part in this becoming a state park back in the day. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
That was a while ago, back in the late 1980s. I had been elected to the board, and the county had been trying to acquire the Fraco Nugget and move the mineral exhibit back from the ferry building in San Francisco to the Mother Lode, to Mariposa. And it seemed at that point we determined the only way possible was through legislation to require the State Department of Mines and Geology to give up the museum to the state parks and create a park in Mariposa County.
And this is the only state park in Mariposa County,
Yes,
right?
it is.
So that was a kind of a big deal.
It was a pretty heavy lift for a bunch of young rural supervisors.
So you learned your lessons about operating in the state bureaucracy.
Well, that's where I first learned my way around Sacramento, yes.
Okay.
Well,
And there's some stories about how that political intrigue unwinded. There was a senator, Milton Marks, who was opposing all of this, of course. And there's always the issue of money, funding, both at the state and the local level. So you've pretty well had your hands full and your life dictated by a California State Mining and Mineral Museum.
well, it was a big issue going on. At the same time, we were also dealing with the Wild and Scenic River legislation at Saxon Creek water project. But this one was more unique. Eric Erickson, the supervisor and friend from Cathy's Valley, was also very close friends with our Assemblyman Bill Jones. And we've got Bill Jones to introduce legislation in the state assembly to move the mining and mineral exhibit to state parks from the Division of Mines and Geology. And of course, Milton Marks, a senior senator from San Francisco, opposed that strongly. So we had to figure out a way to deal with it, since Willie Brown and the Democrats controlled the assembly, and the Senate was controlled by the Democrats also. But Ken Maddie was our state senator, a Republican, and he was very helpful in the Senate side again, but we still needed to get Democratic support.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been working with Tony Coelho, our congressman, quite a bit on the Merced issues and water projects, and asked Tony to help us. And he said, no problem. I'll just call up Milton Marks and say, we're going to move it to Mariposa. Tony then found out we'll take this legislation that Bill had introduced. So he said, no problem, I'll make some calls, which he did.
He did. So Mariposa was kind of thrust into mainstream California politics, trying to get the mineral exhibit back to its Mother Lode roots.
We were, and Tony is just an amazing person and very savvy politically. So he just called up the members of the committees in the assembly and said, look, to the Democratic members, said, this young county supervisor is going to come up and meet with you and explain this legislation that Bill Jones has introduced and why we need your vote.
You were pretty young then, huh?
Oh, I was 35, 36. Yes.
So, heck of an education.
It was the course, yeah. It would have been equivalent to a Bachelor of Science in Political Science.
You know, one of the things that my friend Leroy Radonovich, who was also involved in the early days of this, we talked a lot about the fact that the county made a commitment to invest money and political energy in doing something that was promoting tourism. And that was kind of a first for Mariposa. We had never taken an aggressive position as a county government with respect to economic development. This is after Prop 13, and we relied on property taxes to fund government. And the county all of a sudden had to find new ways of paying for government here. And this was kind of a first investment on the board's, from the board's perspective, of trying to do something to promote economic development in Mariposa County.
I think that's true, and part of it was the leadership Leroy provided. I mean, it was Leroy and Erickson and myself. And I think with Leroy was obviously the senior member. We'd call him Dad. And we all had this vision for a future of the county, not just financially, but planning-wise. And this was one of those many projects, like Saxon Creek, the Wild and Scenic River for tourism and to supply future water source. Scenic highways. We did YARTs. We did, the transit systems. All started in those days.
Right.
The original Merced River Trail we started in 1989. Those discussions. The county master plan. If you look where the library is today, we bought that property while all three of us were on the board, and planned a future site for the county administration. We bought that entire block up over time. The probation office, the historic buildings around the courthouse, we tried to buy all those and keep the county center intact. So we were looking years ahead, which was very unusual, especially since two of us were in our 30s. When George came on and replaced Leroy, we had the youngest board of supervisors in the state.
They used to make jokes about the kiddie corps in Mariposa, and we had a young administrative staff.
Well, then we brought John McCammon in, and so I give John, Leroy, Eric. I mean, it took all of us. It took a team, and
Right.
it took Bill Jones and Ken Matty, and who were very helpful on the Republican side, and were very well respected by their party to get what they needed. And then Tony just made it happen with the Dems, and he basically rolled the senator from San Francisco in a Democratic Assembly and Senate and got the legislation passed.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Mariposa made a major transition, became a big-time political player in Sacramento, and made some major progress. I'm fortunate, you and I both are fortunate to have been part of the Mariposa Renaissance. Anyway.
Yeah, so I think it was, it was the beginning of many things in Sacramento for us, because the relationships and the knowledge, like particularly Eric and I, who traveled a lot more than Leroy to Sacramento, the relationships we both developed and the knowledge of the process helped us in many, many things down the road. Be it from Biodiversity Council having one of their 4 big workshops in our county, wild and scenic issues, all those various issues over the decades came back because of those relationships established on the Mineral Exhibit Bill. John Vasconcellos, who was chair of the Rules Committee, never forgot Mariposa County. And we even had one of his self-esteem task forces here because he asked us to. And he'd helped us on this, so Leroy and the whole board said, okay, we'll try it.
So, the exhibit is constantly under pressure financially. There has been movements to defund it at the state level, and for a while, every year, the board had a long discussion as to whether or not to continue to pay for the rent of this facility down at the fairgrounds. Is there anything in your mind that maybe could make this facility more secure politically?
I was talking to Phyllis today, my wife, and she said, there's no signs. Nobody even knows it's there. There should be a billboard at the county line, not just saying "Welcome to Mariposa, home of Yosemite," but advertising the California Mining and Mineral Exhibit and the Fraco Nugget is in Yosemite, and you have no idea. Mm-hmm. Nobody would know that driving up 140.
Raising its visibility.
Yep. Raising it through, I think, to me, that would be an incredible thing to do.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for the interest.